Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers, and you are in the bonus feed, which may in fact be, as it is for most of you, the Patreon feed, but we also want to welcome in listeners who are hearing us via Apple Podcasts and the new subscription feature we have over there.
That's right. You can access the bonus content. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you can continue to get this show every single week the way you have been the entire time. Keep subscribing on Patreon. You don't have to do anything else. If you are a new subscriber through Apple Podcasts, welcome. We're going to be talking about, you might have heard we have some other features on the Patreon as well. We have the Be the Randomizer feature. When you go back and listen to the archives of the bonus content here that you have as part of your subscription, you're going to hear us talk about people making requests. And so if you decide you want to make a request to the show, you can always pop over to the Patreon, sign up there, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom, and that is where you can join the tier for 1 month to be the randomizer. You join that tier, you can send us a message and tell us what show you want us to review. Or you can pop over there and grab yourself a t-shirt as well. And existing Patreon subscribers, you can always bump up a tier for 1 month and get yourself Be the Randomizer month, or bump up, grab yourself a t-shirt, and come back down to the bonus audio tier. Now, is part of bonus content. We started this feed because the randomizer, as it is random, will pull shows that don't have a place, right? We needed a land of misfit toys to put these shows that didn't fit into the season 1 or season 2 formats.
Yeah, and if you're a new subscriber, all you have to do is go back into the archives of the bonus content, and you will see many examples of how this is the land of misfit toys here on the bonus side of Wrestling at Random. This week's show, maybe more than anyone we've done so far, absolutely fits into that category, as we certainly couldn't call it a major wrestling event or a pay-per-view, the type of things that were in season 1. You can't really call it a episode of weekly wrestling TV like is featured in season 2. This is more reality TV, I would say, with pro wrestling content than anything else. We are going to review an episode of Tough Enough.
WWF Tough Enough. This is from season 3. We're parachuting into the middle of season 3 of Tough Enough. I loved Tough Enough. Like when season 1 of Tough Enough came out, I thought it was awesome, and I never missed an episode.
I watched
so
it.
Good.
Anyone who listens to this show knows how much my mom hates pro wrestling and hated it when I was a kid. My mom watched this show with me. That was, it bridged the gap. It was the real world with wrestling.
Yeah, and you had a lot of stars making guest appearances on the season 1, and you had, you got to watch these guys train, and it was it was fun watching like random newbies training for wrestling. It was pretty good, and it was captivating, and everyone living in the house, and so this was a good show. This is season 3 now, so you have to make, as a reality show goes on, tweaks and changes to the formats and what have you. So a little history about how Tough Enough came about. The idea of the show originally came from a deal with the then WWF made with MTV in the spring of 2000. One part of the deal was to create a reality series where contestants would compete to win a WWE contract, the winners being one male and one female contestant. Tough Enough aired on MTV for 3 seasons, from 2001 to 2003, and it actually drew better ratings than the UFC's Ultimate Fighter, except for the Kimbo Slice season. But all the other seasons, Tough Enough drew better ratings, and Tough Enough actually started the careers of a number of WWE wrestlers, including, here's a list, that all were were contestants at some point on
So
Tough
not
Enough.
necessarily winners, but they all appeared as contestants.
They were
on the
contestants
season.
or cut just in the last rounds, just before being cast into the series, but were offered contracts anyway, as coming off of their auditions as part of Tough Enough. Melina, John Morrison, Nydia, The Miz, Matt Morgan, Josh Matthews, The Boogeyman, Luke Gallows, Shad Gaspard,
Oh, Luke
Daniel
Gallows. I had
Puder,
no recollection of that.
Ryan Reeves, Chris Nowinski, Kenny King, and Mandy Rose were all, at some point, part of the Tough Enough competition.
Jesus, Kenny King. I totally forgot about that. And then he feels like he's been in Ring of Honor for 35 years. Kenny King, who will forever draw the ire of both you and I, as the man who eliminated the Great Muta and Jushin Liger and stopped them from actually doing moves against each other at Madison Square Garden, which we were both at. Still angry about that.
Oh, that man was hated by not just us, the entire sold-out Madison Square Garden.
Yes.
So the problem with Tough Enough was that it did its job, and it created stars. None bigger than Maven in the first season, Maven Huffman. But the winners had very little training and were nowhere close to ready for WWE.
Well, and the problem was that, obviously this show was taped ahead of time, but you couldn't take Maven after he won the show, but before it aired, you couldn't put him on the house show loop and have him get experience before he was ready to debut on TV, because everybody would have then known that he had won Tough Enough. So it's weird, because I think, and we talked about this a little bit before we pressed record on this podcast, that you can draw a really like a through line from Tough Enough to the Wild and Young era of NXT. And Tough Enough was so much more effective at creating stars. Whereas when you watch those old NXT episodes, like the one we reviewed in season 2 on the free feed, and my point throughout that was no one could look like a star on this show. The way it was set up, it was impossible to come off or become a star. Whereas here, there were so many things and it had so many advantages in the way it was set up to create stars. But to your point, the problem was that they were taking people who really didn't have much, if any, experience, and there was no opportunity for them to get really the relevant experience that they needed before they would, debut on Raw. Because you're not going to, with how much of a success the show was, you weren't going to debut Maven like on whatever, like Jacked or Metal at that point. He was going to have to be a big star.
Yeah, the problem was really evident with Maven, who the crowd wanted to be a superstar. But he also ended up going on the road and had issues on the road with the quick fame going to his head, and he could only have good matches with the most experienced workers. And that's another issue with taking people who are picked for the show because they're good looking, but have never actually like done the grind of wrestling. Yeah. They were kind of given the golden ticket. So instant stardom can go to people's heads.
Well, particularly when you pick people on a reality show, a lot of times you are picking people that they will make good TV because they have precisely the qualities that will make them insufferable in a locker room or backstage or on the road. So it's weird because it, as you said, it was set up to and did its job to create stars. But then from there, so many of the elements of what made those guys stars or women stars on the show were going to make it impossible for so many different reasons to actually work in the real, quote unquote, real world of pro wrestling.
Yeah, similar situation in the final season. They were paying Daniel Puder. He won the $1 million Tough Enough. So that was a 4-year, $250,000 a year contract. So because they were paying Daniel Puder so much, they wanted him on the main roster as an instant star. But he also wasn't ready, either in or out of the ring, because he also had such little training. If we look at the past winners, so season 1 was Maven and Nydia, who we have seen on this show, reviewing her with Jamie Noble on
Great act.
A great act. Jackie Gata, now Jackie Haas, married to Charlie Haas.
Wow,
Her and Linda Miles won season 2.
Jesus, I totally forgot about both of them. I have no recollection of Linda Miles at all. I have a recollection of Jackie Gata. Just being
Linda Miles had a
horrendous pro wrestler.
Yeah, Linda Miles, also a horrendous pro wrestler. She had a dominatrix role managing the Basham brothers for a little bit, and then ended up leaving the business altogether. Season 3, we'll tell you who wins season 3 at the end of this recap. Daniel Puder won season 4 after a revival for season 5. They brought the show back, and that was won by Andy Levine, who never made it out of Florida Championship Wrestling. He went to FCW in their developmental, never made it out. And season 6, the final and last Tough Enough, was won by Josh Brettel and Sarah Lee. Neither of them made it out of NXT.
I was going to say, these are real people?
Yeah, none of them made it out of developmental. Runner-up for the final season was Mandy Rose, who is on the main roster currently for WWE at the time of this recording. So that is your Tough Enough history. We open this episode with an intro flashing the cast across the screen. So the cast is John, Jill, Justin, Eric, Matt, Nick, Jamie, Kelly, Chad, Rebecca, Scott, Lisa, and Jonah. And
wow, 5 J's, man. That's
as undescriptive.
You could have been on the show. You had like a 30% chance of being cast.
Yeah, as undescript as that just was of me reading names is how this intro was as well. It was just their picture and the name, and we're like, okay. And then we get a little recap previously on Tough Enough, where we get caught up on where this season is, and we're told Kelly, she should have left, but she didn't. And we're told Jonah was feeling woozy after a match.
Yes, and Nick got eliminated, but everyone thought Kelly should have been eliminated instead. And yes, keep in mind or remember the Jonah woozy story here, because that will be one of the main threads throughout this half hour of is it not pro wrestling television. After the recap, we are at the Real World house. It's the Tough Enough house, but it is basically the Real World house. And this is where Jonah reveals that he's been dizzy for the last 10 days, but isn't saying anything. So clearly here in whatever this was this 1999, 2000, 2001? I don't know. Do you remember offhand? Do you have that?
This is season 3, so this had to be 2003.
Okay, so the concussion protocol.
no protocol.
WWE in 2003 was lacking is my main takeaway from this show so far.
Although Jonah, like a seasoned pro wrestler, doesn't want to tell the trainer so he can keep going. So
yes, yeah, he's got more veteran instincts than we realize here. Then they flash Matt Capitelli is on the screen briefly, and then I get legitimately very sad because this guy, for my money, was the star of this show.
Absolutely.
Meaning this season of Tough Enough. This guy, I think, and again, it's easy to say this because you can fill in the blanks of what didn't and couldn't happen. But this, to me, of all the people that appeared on Tough Enough, this was the guy that could have and should have been the biggest star. He had everything you could possibly want. Great look, great body, incredibly athletic, likable, just checked all the boxes. But his career and then his life came to a very tragic, very early end.
Yeah, Matt tells us that there's only 8 people left on the show. Al Snow is your head trainer, and
he does not have head. I like that, though. He's the head trainer. That's a very good play on words that you may or may not have
thank you
have intended there.
Scott apparently can't do the moves, but
well, let's recap, because he can't do the moves. That is abundantly clear immediately. He then says of himself that he has the charisma and personality that no one else on the show does. And as he's saying this, we see him having another one of these trainees in a camel clutch, and he is like screaming and yelling, but it is so play acting pro wrestler, like the most you've ever seen. And this is what he's doing as he is, we hear him in a voiceover saying that he has more charisma and personality than anyone else on the show. And if that isn't, that's like damning with faint praise. If he has more charisma than anyone else on the show, everyone on here is doomed.
Well, yeah, but we already know that this is incorrect, and he's wrong in his analysis, because we just saw Matt Capitelli telling us that there's 8 people, and this man has 10 times more charisma than young Scott could dream of having.
Yes, just telling us that we're down to 8. The most just basic information being given, and he screamed stars so much more than Scott.
So Ivory is another trainer on the show. And Ivory says that Jonah is a lot of talk and would fail miserably in front of a crowd.
This is preceded by Bill DeMott calling Jonah, quote, a fat piece of shit, unquote. So Bill DeMott here already exhibiting the kind, caring, compassionate qualities as a trainer that would be his hallmark for years to come.
Oh, there'll be a pep talk here in a second from Bill. So apparently on Tuesdays, they take everyone to the canyon outside to work out and run drills. We see them running, and they're carrying heavy bags. And Kelly, who has the back injury, she drops the bag, which means every time she drops the bag, everyone's got to do 25 push-ups.
Yes, which Bill DeMott takes so much pleasure in yelling 25 push-ups. We also, just before I make another point about Bill DeMott, we can, even though this is a reality show, take a quick trip to Fashion Corner. Stay tuned. I also just have to note, like, we see John Morrison for the first time, and it's amazing how much he just looks like a normal guy here, which, again, everyone is a normal guy at some point before they become a wrestler. But like when you see him as a wrestler at any point in his career, including the present day, he just looks like such a unique star guy. Here, he just looks like a dude.
He looks like a dude. John Hennigan here. He looks like a dude until he wrestles later in the show, and then you're like, oh my god, this guy's the winner. Like, this guy has to win. And so it's a no brainer.
Can we talk about Bill DeMott's look here, though?
Please do. Yeah,
they do like a little sit down, like interstitial with him, and I mean, I guess I just said shit. So can I use another word? I'm going to use another word here on the bonus feed. He looks like the biggest douche here. He has his like dark Guy Fieri hair, and then this visor and this goatee, and he's so serious and is clearly lacking any self-awareness about how foolish he looks. Like, this is a guy that when you see him, you go, yeah, I could see him being called General Erection.
Yeah, this guy's the worst. And when you hear all the stories about Bill DeMott, you're like, yeah, no, this tracks.
Yeah, it all tracks.
So Kelly keeps dropping the bag. Everyone's doing these push-ups. Matt Capitelli has to sprint back and forth to help Kelly. And again, star of the show, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
he's got everything. All the things I laid out, plus he's the best dude imaginable.
Like, he's a genuine, baby faces sometimes can't connect with the crowd, but then there's like the genuine baby faces, like a Bryan Danielson.
Or like a Ricky Morton. Or
Ricky Steamboat, who just connect as like good dudes, and this guy had all of that.
He, like, the best way I can describe him is like, if you remember, was it High Voltage, the team in WCW from the power plant, and it was Robbie Rage and Kenny Chaos. This guy, Matt Capitelli, looked exactly like Kenny Chaos, but had every attribute that Kenny Chaos did not have. He was, it's so sad, because this guy, Matt Capitelli, would have been a megastar. Absolute 100%. Megastar. It would have, like, he was like in ring, you could see flashes of, on top of everything else, this guy was going to be like another young Flying Brian as far as what he could do in the ring.
Yeah, that's a similar comp that Dave Meltzer made about Capitelli in the ring, calling him a Brian Pillman as well. So Bill DeMott grabs Kelly and gives her a pep talk and says, "The only person that will get you through this is you." Thanks, Bill. Good talk.
Yeah, good talk. He also Scott here again. Scott is saying that Kelly has no athletic ability. And I'm like, dude, you look like a middle manager at Kinko's. What are you talking about? You can't execute a single move. You have no right. You have no right to be talking
kettles,
about
glass houses and stones here.
All of it applies. No right to be talking about what somebody else in this house or on the show can do from a physical standpoint.
Back at the house, Big comes in. He's the talent relations guy.
Yeah, John Gabarick.
Yeah, so he shows up and he tells them that they're taking him on a trip to Iceland.
Yes, no Tough Enough is complete without a trip. So we're going to take you to Iceland, which I would love to go to.
Great trip. No, that's awesome.
But it was hilarious because about half of these people were genuinely excited to go to Iceland. The other half, you could tell, did not want to go to Iceland at all, but were trying so hard to make Big think that they did.
Yes, before they leave for the trip, there will be an additional cut. So someone will not be on the trip.
Yes, and Kelly is very worried immediately that she'll not get to go to Iceland.
Back to training. Matt says that everyone's worried about being cut. No, Matt is not worried. Then
like if Matt or John say that they're worried about being cut, those are fed lines. Because when you look at Scott or Kelly or some
Jonah.
of these other guys, I think the guy that was Dolph Ziggler's rookie on NXT. I think he was here somewhere. Like there were some serious zeros here. There's no way. We were at least 6 weeks away from anyone even considering cutting a Matt or a John.
Yeah, so we get a montage of Matt doing solid stuff. So this is where we get to see Matt in the ring, rock solid. And Jonah telling us that he starts describing John Hennigan, John Morrison here. He starts describing John as, he goes, he's like Spider-Man out there. I wish I could pick up the moves as fast as John does. And so everyone's worried except for John and Matt, basically, is what we're shown in this vignette.
Or at least everyone should be worried except for John.
Oh, they told us by putting a montage together of Matt being awesome and Jonah telling us how awesome John is. They're basically saying, show knows.
They were reassuring us that we could in fact become emotionally invested in Matt and John. It would be okay.
After a backdrop, Jonah is down and he doesn't get up in the ring. Al Snow comes to check on him, and Jonah tells him that he's been dizzy for the past couple days. He's crying. He's like, "Don't pull me out of the show."
Yeah, he can't hold his head up. He's seeing spots. He asks Al Snow to promise him that he won't be cut, and Al basically says, I can't promise you that.
No, he goes, "Let's talk to the doctor before making a decision." At the hospital, the neurologist checks out Jonah.
Jonah is, I'll say this dude had carny pro wrestling instincts for days. And we see this throughout this episode, whether it be him not telling the trainers about his head injury. Here, he's trying to work the neurologist into clearing him. He's just an astounding guy.
Back in training, Scott is taking the worst hip toss ever. He's messed everything up. This guy is horrible.
He looks, as far as his ability to take basic moves, it's like that Charmel versus the girl from Survivor match in TNA. It's Charmel versus Jenna Maraska boiled down into one man here. He cannot, like, he's getting arm dragged and he's like flinging his body the wrong direction. He can't take a hip toss. No. And El Snow just stops him.
He stops him because he's like, you might hurt John Hennigan, and like this guy's gonna be a star.
Yeah, it's like this has got to change. And then the best part is Al Snow asks him what he's doing wrong, and not only is he unable to execute these moves or take these incredibly basic moves, he can't even like describe what it is that he's not doing right. Al is just completely exasperated at this point. Just tells him, "Get out of the ring! Like, what are you doing?"
Back at the hospital, we're told that Jonah has labyrinthitis.
Labyrinth. Okay, so I didn't look any. I didn't look any of this up because I didn't want to spoil or ruin how this made me feel. My take is that this is all bullshit. I think labyrinthitis is not real. I also don't understand how they're giving him concussion medication.
Right. Medication is all he needs and can continue. So I'm like, is labor? I had the same vibes. I'm like, is labyrinthitis like a crushed larynx? Like,
like, did he watch The Labyrinth too many times? And that's what screwed him up. And that's why
so it was not a concussion. It was just some medication and you're good to go. Labyrinthitis. Maybe the doctors
pills
here
and
on
then
the
kept back in the.
If we have any doctor listeners of the bonus feed, let us know. So Jonah decides, because he's in good health and will be able to stay in the competition, he decides to prank everyone. So he puts a ridiculously large bandage around his head, a full neck brace around his neck, and he tells us that the best pranks, quote, shock people to death. I disagree, Jonah. I disagree.
And with that, Jonah, being the creative person that he is, has decided that he's going to pull a rib on his fellow cast members. So you're going to have to keep a straight face.
What makes a good prank is that you stun the people, shock them to death.
Go in.
It's working, dude. It's working.
Should we go in?
That's good. No.
He's going to go in and tell the kids that he's really banged up, he's really hurt, and he's not going to be able to continue. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this is going to work or not.
Well, and he goes all in here. And what I apologize for talking over you a moment ago. What I was going to say was that it's always the best thing to do in wrestling to give a guy some pills and tell him to get back to work. And that's what happened here with Jonah. And then, yes, he even makes himself cry in the parking lot so that his eyes are red. And then,
everyone thinks this is a great idea. Everyone in the WWE side is like, let's mess with everybody.
Well, it tells you so much about the culture of this company in that you've got 12, 13, however many people are left. They're wrestling. They're barely trained. They're going in there and wrestling, and they're distracted because they think this guy might have a broken neck or a bruised brain. And so they think the best thing to do is to make these people think that even more. Al Snow thinks it's a great idea. Ivory thinks it's a great idea. Of course, Bill DeMott does. The big like corporate head of talent relations or whatever, he's on board with this. Just imagine like any other corporate culture with this being encouraged and then being put on television. And that's the last criticism I'll give of this, because the performance that we're about to describe from Jonah is an all-time great performance. And I will just say that after watching this, I don't understand how this man did not at least have a career as a manager in pro wrestling.
So Biggs sits everyone down. It's tough when bad things happen to good people, he says. The sad music starts to swell and play as the medic helps Jonah into the room.
The minute I walk in the room, Kelly lost it. Just lost it.
I just want to tell you guys how much you guys meant to me. Throughout this whole competition, you guys have been my brothers and my sisters. You guys have all impacted my life so much. just so much. Everybody in different ways. I can say so many things about each one of you, but, you know, maybe if you guys said something nice about me, it would be kind of cool before I left.
Every morning when I was feeling down and my body was hurting, you were always the one to push me, and you and I were always able there to get each other through and make each other happy when we were feeling down.
You know, point out like a lot of the bad stuff about me, but instead of me feeling bad about it, you kind of made me just laugh about it and just feel better. And that's something I'm never gonna forget about you. You've just been so good.
You're one of the funniest bastards I've ever met. And I really appreciate you just having fun with us and, you know, being you.
When I first met you, boy, I thought you were the biggest in the world. I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought you were an ass. Like in this last 4 or 5 weeks, like I think I got closer to you than I did anyone here.
Going down the line, no, I really didn't, you know, feel that bad. You know, this is a great rib. I was gonna get them, you know. Then all of a sudden it gets to the last person, and Matt comes up.
You're like my brother, kid.
And at that point, I honestly felt really bad.
Thanks for everything, dude.
I was thinking in my head, maybe I should just whisper in his ear, buddy, come on, man, it's just a joke, it's just a joke.
You'll be with you this whole thing. Where you from, kid? Where you from, kid?
Boston, kid. I imagine that it would be like going to my own funeral. You really get to know what someone thinks about you.
I just want you guys to remember what you said about me today.
When I'm kicking your ass in the ring. I think that Bill, Al, Ivory, all the trainers actually saw that I can, you know, do a little acting. So I think that raised the level on my standards a little bit.
Oh, what a rib right there, right there. Good stuff.
Jonah's rib was one of the most creative ribs that I've ever seen, and it was masterful. I was salty. As soon as he stood up and said it was a rib and he got us, it's coming to him. That's for sure.
That's how we relax after some heavy morning like that. You're my boy, kid. You're my boy. I can't believe it, dude. You're my boy.
It was a good rib. Tasteless, but it was a good rib.
Jonah gives a speech and starts fake crying. Everybody is super sad, except John's face seems skeptical. He was the only one who did not seem like he was totally buying this, but everybody else was super upset at Jonah giving this speech. Everyone then takes turns saying nice things to Jonah, like, you always made everybody laugh. We needed you in the house, and this is terrible that this happened to you. And then greatest guy in the world, Matt Capitelli, is so upset. He gets up and he hugs Jonah, and he's there with him, and he seems like the best guy ever. And
he says, "You're like my brother, kid." He's crying.
He's ugly crying. He's trying to give Jonah a pep talk while he's like just so broken up about this. Like, I as an empath here was like feeling so bad for Matt, knowing what was about to come.
100% the same. But yeah, I don't know that we can do justice to just how great of a performance. Again, this was from Jonah. These people bought it hook, line, and sinker. Again, such a great heel too. He makes everyone tell him why and how they love him. He makes them go down the line and spill their hearts and souls out to him about why they love him and why they'll be so sad to see him go. As his head is bandaged. He's in a neck brace. He's crying. It's incredible.
So he lets everyone in on the ruse, tells them that he's fine. Everybody is happy that it was just a rib, except for Matt, who walks off in. He's got to go collect himself here.
Again, you're underselling how he reveals this, though. He says, again, he's crying. He says, "I just want you all to remember what you said about me." And then he rips the neck brace off and says, "When I'm kicking your ass." And everybody just they're like relieved, But mad, as you said, Matt storms off for a second, but he's Matt, so he's not mad for long.
No, he
and then of course
hugs Jonah, and
yes.
he's like, "Oh, you got me." But
and then of course all the asshole coaches are just celebrating this like it's the greatest thing they've ever seen in their life.
So Scott and Kelly are back at the house, and they're just talking about how they are both the worst.
First, we've got a little bit of conversation with Jonah about how great of a rib it was. Eric says he thought this brought everyone closer, and I'm like, oh, there's a guy named Eric on this show. He's not going to win because they have not focused on him at all. It's always the tell. I mean, I haven't watched reality TV in ages, but I used to always watch like The Real World, which wasn't like someone would win that, but like the original like Road Rules and Real World Road Rules challenges. And there'd always be that guy or that girl that like 8 episodes into the season, you're like, who the fuck's that?
Yeah, I literally have in my notes here, Eric has entered the chat.
Exactly.
Like, oh, hello.
It's literally the only time we see or hear from him on the show is when he says this rib brought everyone closer together. But yeah, then it's just Scott and Kelly commiserating about who will be the final cut. And Kelly just after Scott leaves flat out says he should be cut because he will hurt people.
So the coaches are all meeting and they're comparing notes on who they should cut and who they should keep, and they're comparing notes. Basically, John is the most talented kid they have. He's the most technical and absolutely correct. Justin has no charisma, also correct.
Yes, but he can do moves, so that's not going to work in the WWE.
Scott has heart, but takes too much time to learn stuff.
Yeah, well, the Bill says that Scott is a great kid, and when you're reviewing someone really in any endeavor, and you don't say anything specific about the qualities they have that make them fit for the job, but you just say they're a great kid, that's trouble.
Yeah, no, and he takes too much time to learn by all of the time and learning nothing so far is what we've learned.
Exactly. Learn doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
They talk about Kelly being bad, but they can't tell if she's bad or it's just because of her back injury.
We should mention too, Kelly, by the way, like look wise, like
a young Lita.
I was exactly the same thing. I said she's got a bit of a young Lita look. So you could see why they weren't rushing to get rid of her if they thought that maybe her lack of ability to perform in the ring was more based on an injury rather than any sort of, just lack of aptitude. We also have to mention now, so they do this, they do the rundown, and then they go back to the gym. We have to talk a little bit about the setting here. Tracks West. Tracks with an X. West. Again, anytime something is labeled as west or east or north or south, it always makes you wonder, what about the other directions? What's Tracks East like? But what you need to know about this is not the WWE Performance Center. This is a gym that appears to be housed in a garage.
Yeah, you feel like it's those weird undescript industrial parks near
Yes.
like they're just off the highway there. That's the kind of vibe this has back, and it's not in one of the front units. It's towards the back. You got to drive a little bit to get to Tracks.
It feels like there's a ring in the break room, if there would be a break room, in like an Amazon fulfillment center.
Yeah, it is it's just a big empty garage warehouse thing with this ring. No, this is the performance center. This is not.
Yeah, there's not room for 5 rings. There's barely room for 1.
So the way that they were going to do this elimination is everyone's lined up. Al Snow has tickets to Iceland. Whoever doesn't get a ticket is cut. So he starts walking down the line, handing tickets, saying, sit down, sit down.
In a very... Al Snow was actually great here on this show. Like, you can have your quibbles with him, but he was fantastic here. Like, again, total worker. But whatever tone was called for by the particular segment, he nailed it.
Until it gets down to Scott and Kelly. And the two worst are standing there. Al then hands the ticket to Kelly. So Scott is eliminated.
Sit down. I'm sorry. You're cut, Scott. I I appreciate your heart and your desire, but this is not your time. We say your goodbyes now. Okay?
He tells Scott that it's not his time. He appreciates his heart and desire. And then they all talk about how nice Scott is. Scott is over on the edge of the ring, and Al gets into his ear and whispers to him, if you want this, don't let it slow you down. And like, I appreciate Al trying to be nice, but Scott should absolutely let this slow him down. He should let it slow him down to a complete halt.
Jonah says people didn't expect Scott to get cut, which means everyone expected Kelly to get cut.
Yeah. And then Ivory says the whole group was affected by Scott leaving. And I guess maybe because it opened a spot for someone with charisma, because he was the most charismatic guy here. We then see clips from earlier in the season. And the weirdest, most out of place thing in this show, apparently at some point early in the season, Tommy Dreamer caned the ever-loving hell out of Scott to welcome him to season 3. What?
Yes, we see a clip of Tommy Dreamer caning him, and then it immediately goes into a montage of like fun at the beach.
Yes. Like, this is again one of those moments, and it was just fleeting, but I just have to wonder what the people like my mom who were not wrestling fans were watching this because it was like real world adjacent, what they thought when they saw something like this.
So Tommy Dreamer canes him, montage of fun at the beach, and then we see him walking out of the training warehouse. As the show ends, we see a clip for next on Tough Enough.
Do we ever? Next week, they go to Iceland. Eric has sex with someone, and apparently that means that Big has to make a cut.
That's right. Next week, we hear from Big saying there must be a cut in Iceland. Not a lot of wrestling training footage on this show.
No.
Definitely nothing happening in the house either. Like, there wasn't like tons of house drama. No. And
the closest was Jonah saying that Kelly needs to go at the beginning of the episode. I guess if you count the fake injury thing as house drama, even though it was in Trax West, that would count. But it didn't make anyone mad. Everyone still loved each other afterward.
No, I feel bad for the poor editors trying to make a reality show out of the house stuff and make that interesting, because it seems like these people had just no personality at the house or no issues. So
what it actually reminded me of is, I don't know how avid of a viewer you were of the early seasons of The Real World. I was obsessed. And my favorite season was Real World London. And why was it my favorite season? Because everybody on the show was nice and cool and got along. Clearly, I'm not the target demographic for reality shows, because it was not the most popular season. It was like the only season that they rarely ever, if ever, replayed afterwards because nothing happened. But that's what this reminded me of. Just a bunch of pretty nice people with middling personalities hanging out.
The person who appeared likely to become the biggest star spawned by this show was Matt Capitelli. Like I mentioned, Dave Meltzer called him a Brian Pillman lookalike in the ring who was a college football player. He took naturally to the ring in season 3 and was the clear winner, well ahead of John Hennigan, who's now John Morrison. Capitelli was the most popular wrestler in Ohio Valley Wrestling when he was down there getting additional training and in the developmental territory at the time. And that's when he was diagnosed with brain cancer and forced to retire. Absolutely tragic. But yeah, Matt Capitelli and John Hennigan both won this season. John Hennigan went on to have a great career. Unfortunately for Matt Capitelli, his was cut short before it could even get started with brain cancer. Awful.
Yeah, absolutely awful and tragic. And then in 2018, he passed away from complications from the brain tumor. So yeah, just really, really sad stuff. Obviously, just as always for him, just as a human being and for his family. But then just another one of those. Maybe one of the biggest what ifs of the modern wrestling era is how big of a star would he have become, and how would that have altered the course of things in the WWE? Because like, I honestly, when you see that guy and you see the type of star that he could have become, like, how much room would that have left for a John Cena if you had a Matt Cappotelli there at that level?
Yeah, the most famous episode in this season is the one where hardcore Bob Holly comes and beats up Matt Cappotelli. And
God, I totally forgot about that. God, that was horrible,
but one of the most it was one of the most newsworthy episodes of the season, and again another chapter in the everybody loves Matt Cappotelli story. So yeah, definitely Tough Enough season 3. I think season 1 was, I think everyone agrees, is the best. Season 3 had these two guys in it, and some big personalities. I think I watched all of season 3 back in the day. I definitely did not recall this. I don't recall any I remember Matt Cappotelli getting beat up by by Bob Holly. I do not remember anything about this Iceland trip. I don't remember anything about Jonah's rib here or anything.
No,
but
I'm shocked that I don't remember that too, because I definitely watched this whole season.
Yeah,
I have no recollection of that.
So I think season I think season 3 is probably remembered as the second best season behind season 1.
Yeah, I mean, again, just a window, this one episode, but I would think so. Again, just particularly if you're a wrestling fan, getting to see glimpses of both John Hennigan / Morrison / Nitro / Impact and Matt Cappotelli.
And I want to thank the randomizer for not giving us an episode from the dying days of Tough Enough.
Yes, we didn't get an episode from that reboot that I have no recollection of. This is one from a good season that gives a representative sample of what the show was. And yeah, I certainly had no expectation that this is something that we'd be watching and reviewing. It's one of those shows that I kind of completely forgotten existed. And it is, for all the reasons you laid out, it's an important show in the history of the WWE. And the other thing that it's, to my recollection, it was the first time that WWE put anything on the air that explicitly showed that pro wrestling, or sports entertainment, as you were, was not real. That, you knew it wasn't, but this is the first time they put something on that was like, okay, wrestling is fake. Like, there's no way that any wrestling promotion would have conceived of putting a show like this on in, say, 1985.
No, I mean, how many years removed were you from like the Secrets of Pro Wrestling Exposed show,
and how scandalous that was?
Scandalous, right? Yeah. So, no, this was a big deal, and it was a big success, and yeah, definitely it launched a lot of people's careers. So that is Tough Enough. Do you have a favorite thing on the show you want to share?
Oh man, I mean, I think the easy thing to say would be Jonah's rib, just because it was so ridiculous and he did such a great job, and everyone's reactions. And again, like, to me, my favorite thing is the most bittersweet, because I loved seeing Matt Cappotelli on here. But it made me so sad knowing what obviously, again, he and his family were robbed of, and wrestling fans far secondarily were robbed of. I think I'm actually going to say my favorite thing on this show, though, was Al Snow wearing a Yahoo shirt.
Yes, definitely all the things you mentioned.
Labyrinthitis as well. Maybe that's a real thing, and I apologize. I'm sure it is, and I apologize if any of our listeners or their family members has suffered from labyrinthitis, but it just sounded fake.
Especially when all signs leading up to this were a concussion.
Yes, and the treatment was take some pills.
Yeah, no, I'd say my least favorite thing on this show was just the amount of generic guys that would randomly pop in that I didn't know.
Yes.
Didn't have time for that. And anything with Bill DeMott, just a terrible person.
Yes.
Not a fan. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Another fun episode in the bonus feed. And welcome all of our new subscribers, and continue to enjoy the back catalog. That's all here for you, and new episodes every single week.
Absolutely. Check out the back catalog, and yeah, who knows what will be coming up next time for you in the bonus feed. Like I said, if you haven't looked at the back catalog to get a sampling of everything that the randomizers / the Be the Randomizer supporters have given us, you're in for a treat.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.